Hello, this is the session 5, Social Relations and Organization. We start with Joanna Kiesel, Vessels for Life and Beyond, Portuguese Grave Goods in the Late Danubian Cultures from Poland.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for accepting my presentation. I learned a lot already during this conference. And I would like to discuss here the role of pottery as grave goods in the late Danubian cultures from Poland from the early Copper Age from the second half of the 5th millennium BC. And it is the time we heard already where important changes took place in the south, in the Carpathian Basin, where formal cemeteries appear for the first time with inhumation graves, which demonstrated clear gender differentiation. So men are buried on the right side and women on the left side. And pottery is also very common in these burials, as you can see here. And in my presentation, I refer to a study by Esther Schollner, where she compared ceramic burial assemblages of the Tisapolgar and Podrokareshtu cultures of styles. And in the majority of graves of both cultures, the so-called basic set can be found. So a bowl and a small necked vessel. And in some graves, we also find larger bowls, which can be linked maybe to some kind of feasting activities of a family size community. And apart from this, also larger cooking pots associated only to mature women can be found in some graves. And the less common category are these large size vessels, which can have something to do with long-term storage. So I wanted to look to analyze how it looks like in Poland, in cultures where we assume strong influences from the south, from the Carpathian Basin. These influences are visible in this gender differentiation burial. So we also have women on the left and men on the right side. We have copper grave goods in these graves. However, we don't have such large cemeteries left in the Carpathian Basin. So the question is if the pottery had the same or similar function here as well. And because of the very limited length of this presentation, I will unfortunately not include here the Lublin-Volhynia culture here in the southeastern part of Poland, which is actually the most interesting one, I would say, in this respect. But it has been studied and presented in depth by Anna Zakościelna. Maybe I will include it in the publication, but in this presentation, I will restrict only to these two cultures here, so the Jordanów culture and the Brzeszkujawski culture, which have also something in common. They share very, very similar, I would say even identical copper ornaments that can be found in burials. And they have not been studied in this way as the Lublin-Volhynia culture. So I will start with the Jordanów culture, which is distinguished in Eastern Germany, in Bohemia, Moravia, and in Silesia in southwestern Poland. And the state of research in all these regions is very bad, but regional variability can be seen in pottery. That's why I will only limit myself here to the territory of Poland. And in general, the Jordanów culture pottery can be divided into the fine and the coarse pottery. The fine pottery, especially these jars, are finely decorated, and here you can see examples of the coarse pottery. Graves are known from settlements as well from small separate cemeteries. And altogether from the area of Silesia, 64 graves are known. Unfortunately, most of them are from very old excavations. So the information is very limited about them. Pottery and flint artifacts are the most common grave goods. And pottery was found in 92% of graves. And reliable new data comes only from one side, the Masław, which I will present here in more detail. The Maslow is a small cemetery which was used for about 3 to 4 generations, and it was completely excavated some time ago. It consists of 26 inhumation graves, 25 of them clustered, as you can see here. And pottery is the most common grave good in the cemetery. There were only 4 graves without pottery, but all of them were at least partially destroyed. So we can assume that pottery was really a rule to deposit pottery actually every grave. And you can see, maybe you can see, I don't know if you can see it very well, the pottery types that were found in every single grave. So the most common category were these double-handled jars or mugs, and also the pedestal vessels. So they both make up a kind of a basic set comparable to this one from the Carpathian basin. And elements, so this basic set was found in 15 graves, and elements of the set, so either a jar or a pedestal bowl, was found in additional 6 graves. And we have also some other type of vessels like these jars. They have different handles, but I would say they are similar to these double-handled jars. And we also have some bowls, which are also not pedestal bowls, but they are bowls. So they are of a similar category, I would say. And the only exceptions are these miniature vessels found in 3 graves. And 2 of them were juvenile burials, which maybe is not accidental. And I calculated the volume of the vessels. So jars had an average volume of about 1 liter. And interestingly, the jars that were found in female and children's graves were slightly smaller than average. And these groups are both more uniform than jars found in male burials. Pedestal bowls were larger. They had an average volume of 2 liters, but this group is much more diverse, as you can see here. And again, the group of female pedestal bowls, and especially of children's pedestal bowls, are more uniform, and especially the ones from children's graves are smaller. So this would speak for an association with of these vessels with a real person buried in a grave, maybe as a kind of an offering of liquids, jars and solid food in pedestal bowls. In some cases, animal bones were found in these pedestal bowls, which also speaks for this interpretation. And men had the most standardized number of vessels in graves. Most of them had just this basic set of 2 vessels. And if we consider age groups, maturus individuals, so the oldest one of both sexes, had all this basic set. There's only one woman of this age category. We each had a jar with other handles and a bowl without a pedestal, but it's still a jar and a bowl, which we got as a great good. In the adultus category, there is 1 man and 1 woman buried only with a jar without a pedestal bowl, and interestingly, these are 2 graves which were also without copper, which is an exception at this cemetery. And vessels were located near the head, and I can see no clear pattern placement rules apart from placing vessels around the head. So let us take a brief look at the other sites where the information is, as I said, limited. So at Spiljesmauer, there were 4 graves excavated at this site, all destroyed, and but all of them contained this basic set. That is sure. And here you can see an assemblage from 1 grave, and in this case we have a double basic set. So 2 jars and 2 pedestal bowls. And interestingly, these jars are so small that their capacity taken together is smaller than an average capacity of a jar from the Maslow. And in the Maslow, we didn't have any case of a double of 2 pedestal bowls or 2 jars in a grave. And here you can see the name giving Danuk Śląski. And here again, the information is very limited, the presentation of the burials. But here, for example, you can also have this, you can see this basic set of a jar and the pedestal bowl with animal bones in it. And in this case, there's a vessel placed near the legs of the deceased person, so something which we couldn't see at the muscle at all. And the general presentation of vessel forms found at this cemetery demonstrates also the presence of some categories that were also not present at the Maslow of this emperor, for example. We didn't have them at the Maslow. And if we compare the number of vessels in graves, so that's the most basic information we can have. We can also see some differences between sites. So at the Maslow, the number is just much more restricted to these two vessels of the basic set. And at other sites, we have both a lower number, so one vessel, and a higher number of vessels. So the two vessels are very popular, but they do not prevail as at the Maslow. So now let us move to the north, to the Rzeszów culture. This culture has a much wider territory, the whole Polish lowlands, I would say, and much more sites are known from this region. But these are only settlements of very characteristic trapezoidal longhouses, and burials are found only on settlements in very different location and in a very different number of burials on settlements were found. The pottery of the Brzeszczujawski culture is very uniform. The division between fine and coarse pottery does not exist in this culture. The whole pottery is crudely tempered and it is very less ornamented with very simple impressions and plastic elements. Burials were found on 16 sites of this culture, and only on 5 of these sites there was pottery in graves. And the whole number of graves with pottery makes less than 9% of all burials. So it is, I would say, an exception. We have 8% graves without pottery in the Jordanov culture, and we have 8.8 in Rzeszów with pottery. And interestingly, these graves with pottery concentrate here in Eastern Kuilia, with one exception, which I will refer to later. Yes, so altogether we have 19 graves with 24 vessels only, and they represent very different types and different sizes, as you can see. And there were 14 burials with one vessel only, and 5 burials with 2 vessels, but only 10 of them were complete. And these were miniature vessels, cups, and some amphoras. And the fact that complete and incomplete vessels occur together indicates that this fragmentation could have been intentional. Most vessels were located near the head, and again, here I don't see any clear rules what was deposited where exactly. But the location of all vessels near the head speaks for an intentional deposition even of fragmented vessels. So I would say they were not maybe remains of feasting activities or other rituals that took place during the burial, but they were just deposited in the same manner as complete vessels. And you can see on the drawings that most of the individuals buried with pottery were women, so left side. And there are no gender differences between the type of vessels deposited, with one exception, only men had large bowls, the only 2, so it's very difficult to make conclusions. But let us take a look at selected sites. So the name given Rzeszów, there were 5 burials with vessels, or other burials are marked in pink, and the ones with pottery are marked in yellow. I hope you can see them. So they are dispersed over the whole settlement. And we have here 2 groups of 2 neighboring burials which contain pottery. And in both cases, we have very similar types of vessels which were found in these graves. So pots and amphoras. And altogether, we have only women buried here with pots and amphoras at this single site. Male graves with pottery were registered only at 2 settlements of the Rzeszów culture, and one of them is at Łąki, where altogether 10 burials contained pottery. And We have here at this site only one case where there are two burials very close to each other containing pottery, both of them unfortunately quite destroyed, so we cannot make many conclusions about it. But I see here two zones within this settlement. So in the eastern part of the settlement, we have mainly female burials with only miniature vessels deposited in these graves. And in the western part, we have more also male burials. And here we can find also normal sized vessels. And I forgot to say that at Brześć Kujawski, all these graves with pottery also contained copper, and at the site of Osłonki, only 3 female graves also contained copper. So there is not such a strong correlation as at Brześć Kujawski. And here you can see this one grave in western Lesser Poland, very close to the Jordanów culture. This is the site of Ratów 18, with only one burial found at the site. It's a woman, exceptionally buried on her right side, and her burial also contains 2 vessels, and one fragmented, and one was this jar with 2 handles, and it resembles very strongly the jars from the Jordanów culture, which is actually much closer than the Brześć Kujawski. So I would say it's an influence of the Jordanów culture and not really representative for the Brześć Kujawski culture. So summing up, the comparison of pottery and burials show important differences between archaeological cultures, which, as we already know, is not obvious anymore. However, we can see regional differences within cultures, as between the eastern and western part of the Brześć Kujawski culture, and also intercultural influences such as Ratów. The Jordanów culture belonged to the same, I would say, spiritual tradition as the cultures in the south. An important part of the burial rite was the deposition of food, probably both solid and liquid, for the afterlife, or maybe just for the way towards the afterlife. And this was very standardized, where the position of a set of the same vessel type, only of the fine ware category. And this tradition was not adopted by the Brześć Kujawski culture, where we have some pottery, but very diverse, so there were no rules. And in general, in this culture, pottery had a different social meaning. It was not decorated, so we can say that it was not used to express the identity. On the other hand, its uniformity did express the identity very well, but we can, of course, ask if it was intentional or not. However, in the case of grave goods, pottery did not only express the identity of the people buried, but also contained something and express also the beliefs in the afterlife. So was the belief in the afterlife different in the Brześć Kujawski culture or not? Did people not need food for the afterlife, or was the food deposited in a different way, maybe in organic containers that are not preserved? Interestingly, in the time before, during the stroke pottery culture, pottery was deposited in every single grave within this region. So the Brześć Kujawski communities broke with this custom. And does it mean a shift maybe more towards the hunter-gatherer tradition? So because in the hunter-gatherer cultures, even in Far East, where they know pottery, they didn't deposit it in graves. There are some hunter-gatherer individuals in this Brześć Kujawski, these Brześć Kujawski communities, as indicated by ancient DNA analysis, and we also have some symbolic elements of the culture that got integrated in the sky culture. And the distinctiveness of the Brześć Kujawski communities is also evident in the settlement system, which is very, very, very different from what we know from the Copper Age in the south. And it shows that these communities adopted only some elements of the Copper Age culture of this time, such as gender differentiation, so left and right side, and copper ornaments, but did not adopt others that were adopted in Silesia by the Jordanów culture. And the presentation also shows important social differences between these cultures. So in Jordanów, we can see similarities at the level of communities that establish common rules, And in the Brześć Kujawski, there are differences within these communities that they have to do with maybe different family traditions. It, of course, can be due to differences in size of these communities, because in the case of the Brześć Kujawski, with these large settlements, we can assume that they just integrated diverse, smaller social groups. And we know anything about the size of Jordanov culture community, so they definitely deserve much more attention and much more research. Thank you very much for your attention.
Is there any comments or questions?
I think a short one. Thank you for this so clear introducing us into Polish culture. Maybe I didn't understand well at the end this relation between graves and settlements in both cultures. How it stands, these pottery forms within found within graves and settlements, or is there any settlement?
I mean,
for the same time and the same cultures.
In the case of Jordanov culture, we have only very limited excavations, so there are settlements, but we know anything about houses, and we assume that the settlements were much more dispersed and not so. However, there are ditches surrounding the settlement. But pottery shapes. And pottery shapes. In the Jordanov culture, we have at the settlement we have both fine and coarse pottery, and in graves only fine pottery. And in the Brześć Kujawski, we have all shapes are represented in these few burials, so they were not so fruitful what to deposit in the burials.
And another question, this very short one, regarding these animal bones. Do you have any analysis of the treatment or any chocolate?
No, unfortunately not. No.
Is there any more questions or comments? Can you check? No. Thank you, Jana. Switch my position as a person. The next presenter will join us online, Esther Sos. Can you hear us, Esther?
Welcome to everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, so we
Yeah,
well. Please start sharing your presentation.
Yeah, and can you see my presentation now, or is it succeed?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much, and I want to say thank you for the flexibility that I can change this presentation mode. So in my presentation, I examined some changes.
Sorry, Esther, can we interrupt you for just a second?
Yeah.
Your presentation is not full screen, so if you could just stop sharing your screen, share it again, but share the full screen, not the presentation only, if you understand.
Stop share. I try it again.
Yes. And the first window that pops up, you should click something, it says full screen. Can you just expand your presentation or move a slide so we can?
Yeah, it's okay.
Yes, we can see the first slide right now, but are
Wait
you?
a second. It's okay.
No, it's not. So just stop sharing again, and when you click share screen for the second time, the first option that pops up, it should be written underneath something like share full screen, not share presentation. If you
full screen.
yes. And now try maybe switching to the next slide. Are you still on the first slide or?
No, I tried again, sorry. Share, it's okay.
Oh, yes, perfect, thank you.
But I cannot change the. Okay, it's okay.
Yes.
Can you see the second picture also?
Yes.
Okay. Oh no. Okay. So we started. So during the Roman age, the social structure of the Germanic groups north of the Danube underwent a significant transformation. Based on funeral research, the free armed strata within the smaller communities disappeared over time. Larger but poorly equipped graveyards were established from the 3rd century AD, parallel to the rise of a high-status elite class. The number of the average grave goods decreased in the late Roman period cemeteries. The so-called priestly tombs in the second half of the 3rd century reflects an international ideology of power, imprints as close alliances with the Germanic elite and with the Roman Empire. Many segments of the social transformation can also be seen in the settlement remains, such as the reorganization of the craft industry. I will examine the social and lifestyle changes from the early to the late Roman periods within the settlement pottery of the so-called Inner Carpathian Przewóz culture. The Przewóz culture developed in the territory of central Poland in the 2nd century BC and continued to live until the 5th century AD. During the Marcomannic Wars, in connection with military events, the sites of the Przewóz culture appeared in the southeastern part of Poland, and some of their groups crossed the Carpathian passes up to the Upper Tisza region, so inside the Carpathians. This migration wave has long been associated with the arrival of the Husling Vandals and Viktophal groups at the Dacian Limes zone mentioned in the written sources. The archaeological remains of the Vandal groups were observable in the northeastern part of the Carpathian Basin until the turn of the 4th, 5th centuries AD, so up to the Hunnic period. They maintained various connections with the neighboring barbarian groups, the Quadic and Sarmatian territories, which influenced their material culture. Their relationship with the Roman Empire was decisive. Despite some border attacks on the Barnonian Limes and alliances with other barbarian groups in the 4th century AD, they were essentially allies of the Roman Empire. The burial complex of Ostrovany may have been one of the richest barbarian elite graves of the time, based on the golden insignias, turquoise and bracelet, large number of finds made of precious metal. This indicates the local concentration of power that was established with the approval of the Roman Empire. Although we do not know the residence of the social elite, the settlements formed a dense network during the Roman period. The first settlements dated to the time of the Marcomannic Wars, and the last decades of the 2nd century correspond to the Przewóz sites in southeastern Poland. These were farm-like settlements with a scattered structure, semi-subterranean building with post structures, above and compostal structures, and few storage pits were excavated on them. The archaeological material also show a close connection with the Przewóz culture in Poland. The pottery inventory of the Przewóz settlement in the 2nd century AD consisted exclusively of hand-formed ware, fine and coarse vessels as well. Wheel-turned pieces appeared only in a minimal number, and they were almost exclusively import items from Roman provincial and Sarmatian territory, bowls and storage vessels. The main form of the fine hand-formed Przewóz ceramic is the deep mechanical bowl. Small bowls with flat bottom or omphalous bottoms are also very common, but other vessel types like small pots or cups were present only in a few examples. These were the closed form version of the bowls, so the main mechanical profile was dominant. No historical sources refer to the potters themselves. The early farm-like settlements was inhabited by smaller groups or family units. The potter could be a member of the community, or it could also be an occasional activity of a wandering craftsman, but this refer rather to other type of craft industry. Based on the form variation of the basic types, which were characteristic of certain settlements, the fine hand-formed ceramics and as well the coarse ware were produced by the local communities. Some words about the technology. Depending on the clay used for the fine ware, it is slightly grainy. The most important feature is polishing of the surface. The glossy polished vessels were rare, while burnished surface was common. These horizontal traces of the treatment can be often observed on the vessels. The liny polishing occurs also in the bottom of the vessels. Based on prehistoric analogies, the hand-formed ware could have been burned out in a pit. There's a pit firing. It is a really interesting phenomenon. The Society of Experimental Archaeology in Łódź in Poland conducted research with the university's archaeological department, and during pit firing, the dark black color real characteristic of this fine Przewor ceramics was achieved when the pots were placed in the larger vessel in the fireplace. So the reduction firing environment alone was not enough to achieve the uniformly black color. Influenced by the neighboring Roman provincial and Sarmatian pottery, the manufacturing of ware-turned ware also spread in the Przewor territories. The adoption of the technology could have happened at the turn of the 2nd, 3rd century or beginning of the 3rd century AD. It is really difficult to decide whether the influence of the Roman provincial or the Sarmatian pottery prevailed, as the latter already had high quality pottery at the time. In any case, a decisive amount of imported ware-turned ceramics did not arrive at the Przewor settlements from any area. So the import ware-turned pottery rate remained below 1%. That's a really minimal number. The ware-turned pottery in the Inner Carpathian Przewor sites quickly appear with a wide form spectrum. The main forms correspond to the previously used hand-formed types. Deconical bowls and small bowls or cups. These form types were fired almost exclusively dark gray or black, and their sharp biconical profile imitate the typical hand-formed Przewor fine ware. The other part of the ware-turned form types is no antecedents in the Germanic pottery inventory. Pot-like vessels and globular vessels, jugs, and storage vessels were present in a lower proportion in the settlements in ware-turned technology. They are not closely related to the Sarmatian or Roman provincial forms, so they were not in import items, special forms, but it was not so widespread than the bowls. The forming process of this ware reflects a high technological background. Specific is the ribs and grooves turned on the wheel or forming the vessel bottoms also on the turning wheel. The fine, even smoothed surface, which was very typical to the, for example, the Sarmatian pottery, does not occur very often. Most of the vessels were polished in the wheel. Glossy surfaces also came to light, but burnished vessels with linearly polished traces were quite common. The high-quality firing resulted in uniformly gray or black vessels, reddish, grayish colored, fired in oxidative environment were rare. The ware-turned ceramics were produced in pottery kilns, and its structure corresponds with really widespread Henning B time. It was used from the late Iron Age to the end of the Roman period. The pottery kilns excavated solitarily or grouped on the outskirts of the sites, but there were also large pottery workshops in the region. The manufacturing and spread of mass-produced wear-turned ware can be linked to craftsmen and the new network across the settlements, contrasting to the earlier local pottery production. There was a special group within the wear-turned pottery in the Pshawar territory, known as the stamped ware of the so-called Berek Shurány or Blazice type. Fragments of high-quality bowls and lesser extent jars, pots with stamped-in decoration are found in almost every Inner Carpathian Pshawar settlements of the late Roman period, from the 3rd century AD. This technology was definitely of Roman origin. In the Roman fortress and limes center of Porolissum, pottery workshops operated from the 2nd century AD, which produced fine bowls and jars with stamped decoration in large quantities for the local provincial demand. Due to the geographical position of Dacia province, the Middle Danubian Terra Sigillata ware was quite expensive. Many other workshops we know from province of Dacia. A part of this tableware in Porolissum was produced especially for the export to the Barbaricum. Compared to the products of other Roman provincial potteries, more than 80% of the Porolissum ware were fired dark gray, or not black, rather gray, which was typical Germanic fashion. In other Roman sites and workshops, this colored pottery remained under 20%. The pottery workshops mass-produced wear-turned fine ware, also with stamped decoration, appeared already in the first half of the 3rd century in the Barbaricum. We have got information, more pottery centers.
Please be aware of time.
Okay, okay. So you can, thank you very much. You can check the biggest pottery center in the map. At last, for the examination of the adoption of the technology, the best process, Csengershima site provides us information. Here, typical Porolissum vessel forms are found in different proportion in the material of each pottery workshops. Probably masters who produced only certain Porolissum types could work there. But it has to emphasize that the provincial form types are presented in low percentage. Other Pshawar's wear-turned forms were also stamped, and production of the firing of undecorated vessels also took place in the same workshop. The main question is whether Roman potters could have personally participated in the ceramic production in the Barbaricum. The question has come up several times, but it cannot be proved yet, obviously due to the use of local clay and the absence of master certificate. In any case, the Berek Shurány type fine pottery represented a special circle in the late Roman period in this region. In summary, it is worthwhile to examine the ceramic assemblage of the settlements from the perspective of the technology and origin of the vessels. During the early period, the pottery inventory was characterized by locally produced ware. Imported Roman and Sarmatian pieces can be considered as long-distance trade imports. From the 3rd century, the pottery inventory and supply for network for pottery underwent significant changes. Although the use of the locally produced ware declined, the production of coarse vessels could still be traced back to the settlements. The proportion of imported items which arrived in the Germanic territory from long-distance trade, mainly terra sigillata bowls, remained similar. However, a new kind of exchange network was formed where the wear-turned pottery products of the Pshawar region reached the individual settlements in large quantities. We cannot precisely link each wear-turned piece to a specific workshop yet. The distance between the production site and the market cannot be determined. This trade or exchange network raises many interesting social questions. for which we have very little data to investigate. Based on archaeological examples, and it was also suggested in connection with the Przeworsk pottery in older Polish literature, the production of local fine wares could have been a female activity. On the other hand, the production of Wirtan ware in workshops and the transport for the final products over longer distance were more likely to be done by men. Unfortunately, we cannot test it with archaeological investigation, but however, the spread of Wirtan ceramics can be linked to a new system of social relations in the Przeworsk sites. And thank you very much for the attention.
Thank you, Esther. Is there any questions among colleagues in the main hall? Any comments? No.
Everything was clear.
Yes, everything was clear. Thank you, Esther.
Thank you very much.
We move on with the yes, please stop sharing. We continue with an online presentation. Galina Grozdanova, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Do you hear me now?
Yes, clearly.
Greetings.
Sharing your presentation, please.
Greetings from Bulgaria. Do you see the presentation?
Yes, yes, you may proceed.
Okay. Greetings from Bulgaria one more time, and warm greetings to the organizers of this forum. I'm happy to be able to present to you our first, although preliminary results from a site that was excavated during big rescue excavation related to the construction of Chemus Highway that took place in the years 2020-2021 in northern Bulgaria. The site, yes, the site is located between the rivers Vid and Tosum, near the small modern village of Kalinik, central northern Bulgaria. It is changing. Do you see it changing? On the non-flooded bank of Tosha River, a tributary of Eleshnica. The studied 154 features include sunken and above-ground dwellings and farm constructions, ovens, and different types of pits. The explored features belong to two main periods, Roman and early Middle Ages. In the top layer, numerous archaeological finds, you may see here, scattered by the agricultural work in modern times were found. The cultural layer identified beneath contained predominantly Roman materials, while early medieval layer was not registered. The medieval features, like that one or this one, cut this layer or directly the sterile soil. Different types of pits that have been studied could be seen here on this slide, with the pottery deposits, millstones, and remains of different types of wood. The dwellings had a rectangular, almost square shape with a stone oven in one of the corners and traces of wooden beams for the roof, with variations of orientation and construction. Two ways of views of the dwellings were observed that seemed to be relevant to the richness of the house inventory. The view of some of the dwellings were very close to the sterile soil, almost invisible for the eyes, with scarce amounts of shells there. One of the plausible explanations of the situation could be that the dwellings were abandoned in an organized manner with all the belongings taken. The fields of other dwellings were easy to detach from the surrounding terrain at a much higher level above the heating devices, and as a rule they contained a lot of shelves. The cross-section of these features reveal two different compositions of the ceiling. The main question here is if these features and the ceramic founds should be considered homogeneous or they're composed asynchronously. Although debated widely by scholars, most of which shared opposite opinion, it seems, considering mainly the character of the pottery assemblages, that at least some of them should be considered as one context. At least in some cases, the two levels could be interpreted as remains of different equipment or facilities. During the rescue excavations, each archaeological context have been described and the data entered into a table classifying the ceramics regarding its chronology, technology, and function. Technological groups have been defined as follows from the slide. There is a big diversity comparing the Roman and early medieval classification. Here, the attention will be focused on the early medieval finds. Following the pottery records during the rescue excavations, it was noted that the distribution of the early medieval pottery was almost entirely in the boundaries of the explored sunken features. Outside the features, in the layers, only Roman pottery shards were found. The number of the medieval ones was less than 2% of all the pottery. This fact is of great significance when the results of the field service have to be considered and could be one of the possible explanations why the number of the registered medieval sites as a rule is smaller compared to the Roman and late Roman ones. In the features, the number of the vessels that could be considered belonging to the repertoire of the different households varies from 2 to 10, 12 vessels. The technology of the pottery differs very much compared to the Roman period ones. Different inclusion, different ways of modeling that reflects the form, profiles, bases, and decoration. 4 pottery groups were distinguished. The first 3 of them fired in the presence of the oxygen. Although characteristic and easily recognizable, the presence of the handmade pottery was very limited, around 1%, and concentrated in 4 features in different parts of the site. Most of the group, defined by us as group 2B, is made on a slow, hand-turning wheel with medium-sized inclusions and wall thickness between 0.6 to 8 centimeters, from 0.6 0.8 centimeters. The entire bodies of the vessel are covered with inside decoration applied with multi-tooth tool. The texture was hard. The bases have peripheral edges, sandy sprinkled bases, or relief signs. The color ranges from ochre brown to brownish black. This is the most compact pottery group that could be hardly defined into separate subgroups. As such a separate group are defined vessels with thicker walls, wider inclusions, and bigger and in large quality mineral inclusions, more often with sandy sprinkled bottoms. They are found as single pieces within the features and probably could be considered as residues. The gray ware with burnished decoration that are very specific and characteristic for the old Bulgarian or early medieval culture here were not so often used. Their presence is a little bit more than 2% of the whole amount of the recorded pottery. Although scattered pieces are found in 26 features, which make approximately 1/6 of all the explored features. Almost entire ceramic repertoire consists of pots of oval, biconical, spheroconical shapes. Single forms like pitchers, bowls, and baking plates also appear, but very sporadically. The pots are of different sizes. The average height ranges from 16-17 to between 23 centimeters, with rim diameters from 10 to 18 centimeters the biggest. When processed systematically, it appeared that the profiles of the upper part of the vessel's both slightly differ from one another. The necks are short, everted and even, rounded or thickened, of comma-like shape. The main difference between them seems to be not exactly the profile of the rim, but the curve of the neck. Decoration. 33 decoration patterns have been identified, but most of them appear rather sporadically. More than 65% of the recorded pieces have been decorated only with horizontal lines, like the first two here, a motif that cover more than half of the described pots. Very often, the horizontal lines are combined with wavy lines, oblique notches, and incisions at the upper part of the shoulders. The most common ornaments are presented here on right-hand side. On the site, we have documented various cases of overlapping the features. These contexts indicate that the interruption and the disturbance of the household deposits at the same time, on one hand side for the disturbance of the household deposits, on the other hand side for the comparatively long existence of the settlement. The mapping of the features on the plan reveals additional aspects of their relations to each other, allowing their synchronization and further studying as more complex social structures. Here could be seen a complex of two pit dwellings with remains of wooden fence sharing probably a yard and or anyway belonging to one economic unit. Another microsocial unit seem to be presented by households 1.6 and 110. Based to the presence of identical elements, decoration patterns, and body marks, links between other, more remotely to each other features could be suggested. A brief view to the metal finds, unfortunately small in number, don't contribute much to solve the problems of the chronology of the site. Actually, the problem of the chronology is quite complicated. Our first suggestion, based on the conventional archaeological analysis, through comparing features and sites in the lower Danube basin, was to define phases in the existence of the settlement from 7-8, 9-10, and the latest at 10, the very beginning of 11th century. A short series with C14 and archaeomagnetic dates allow us to work out more precisely the relative chronology of the settlement, although they suggest a chronology for the latest feature much earlier than expected, almost a century earlier. This problem will be subject to additional study, we hope quite recently. Based to the briefly presented study of the pottery of the Krylenik site, we can conclude that the assemblage is quite homogeneous, showing advancing levels of standardization. It belongs to a community that leads a simple lifestyle with no luxurious objects and distinguished foods, but that uses products from local pottery center. The most representative ceramic repertoire probably belongs not to the wealthiest households, but to the latest settlement horizon. The forms, morphology, and decoration share all the main characteristics of the pottery of the Lower Danube region and the culture of the early medieval Bulgaria. At the same time, certain local specific as limited quantity of grey ware and tableware and entire lack of amphorae should be mentioned. When finished, we hope that the study of the Kalinic site will contribute much to our understanding of the early Middle Ages in the area and, of course, of that very specific and little known region so far. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Galina. Is there any comments or questions for Galina and an interesting early medieval site from Bulgaria? No. I would like to ask you something. What kind of differences one can see between pottery from different settlement layers? We saw two objects lying above the most of the houses. So, is there any differences between those two contexts, pottery contexts at all?
Mm-hmm. This is, of course, this is the most important question. On one hand side are the complexes, four of them, features that entirely contain handmade vessels. They're really separated and isolated from the rest of the settlement. So their link to the rest of the settlement is the one side. The other thing that seems to me, and I think that most of my colleagues agree, are certain, they're quite limited vessels, and I have to confess that they're not found in separate features. They contain small. This is what we have defined as group 2A, to be more easy. There, especially here, you see the decoration. Their decoration is of a little bit different types. The incisions are wider. The fabric contains bigger inclusions. The walls are thicker, and probably the profiles are of more or less simplest types. But so far, we don't have we haven't excavated any feature, any separate feature that contains only pottery of this type. It occurs in a small quantity in the other structures. That's why we share the opinion that that their presence there could be as a residue. At least
Yes.
this could be one of the explanations.
Yes, thank you. It looks like of a similar style, so thank you.
Thank you, Vesna. We have to. We're thinking really the pottery seems very homogeneous, but at the same time we have to keep in mind that there are overlaying of the structures, and also the C14 and other analysis, they also show that although the phases are not so big as we thought at the beginning, there is a difference probably between 34, at least 34 years between them.
Thank you
But
very much.
Thank you.
Please stop sharing your presentation. We move on. We have to move on with our insight presentation. Mario Llorente Garcia, port settlements in state to the medieval potteries from the region of the Horn of Africa. Please.
So, hello everyone. First of all, thanks to Jasna and Vesna for organizing the conference and for having a space for my modest contribution. I'm a predoctoral researcher at the Institute of Heritage Studies of the Spanish Research Council, concurrently as a member of the project State Home Pathways to Statehood, an ERC starting grant project whose aim is to give answer to the question, where do the states fall? Looking at the medieval sultanates of the Horn of Africa, their organization and the sources of authority, to know how these polities achieve to get stability while the current states of the region cannot ensure this stability. This project is based in previous work in Somaliland by members of the Institute of Heritage Studies and is currently conducting excavations in Djibouti and Ethiopia. At this point, I'm doing my PhD entitled Archaeology and Territory of the Medieval Sultanates of the Horn of Africa, 11th to 16th centuries, being the analysis of the local ceramics an essential part of this study. But before going deep into this question, it's needed to introduce you to local context. Our study is centered in the western African coast of the Gulf of Aden and Hinterland. This region was Islamized between the 9th and the 13th century, with the missionary activities probably following the trade routes that connected the Indian Ocean with the inner areas of the Horn of Africa. In parallel to this process, several Muslim polities emerged, being the main of them the Sultanate of Shore. Nevertheless, the growing volume of the Indian Ocean trade led to the development of new regional powers. Thus, Ifat became in the new hegemonical sultanate after defeating the Sultanate of Shore. The history of this new sultanate was marked by the conflictivity with the Ethiopian Christian kingdom, until that Ifat was defeated. Nonetheless, the descendants of the last Ifat ruler, named Saad Din, expanded the dynasty, creating the so-called Sultanate of Bar Saad Din, or Land of Saad Din. This was a highly decentralized state, marked by the political instability. Also, Bar Saad Din undertook a total war against the Ethiopian Christian kingdom, which ended with the defeating of Bar Saad Din, which in addition to the Oromo invasion and the disturbance of the Indian Ocean trade by the Portuguese, eventually led to the collapse of the Sultanate. Along all these contexts, several settlements flourished in a region traditionally inhabited by nomads. Namely, my study area is that framed by a square in the map, which includes tourist sites scattered at both sides of the Ethiopian-Somaliland border. The settlements are composed of stone buildings, have a variable size and a power chronology between the 13th and the 16th centuries, were Islamized and were involved in a farming economy. However, not much research has been undertaken on the sites. Thus, the first study plan took place in the 1920s, being barely researched since then. It was in 2015 when a Spanish project began to record the Somaliland side of the border, as well as central Somalia. This project extended to 2020, and its methodology was mostly based in surveys, statistics, and mapping. Moreover, since 2022, the SICOM project has been recording the Ethiopian side of the border, again by surveys, statistics, and mapping, but furthermore establishing in the archaeological site of Ayala. However, so you know, this methodology has some problems. For example, we don't know the beginning date of the settlements, whose datation is given by the import recorder. In a similar way, and attending now from matter of interest, there is a bias on the sample of the pottery recorded due to this coming mostly from the ground level, as well as by the fact that only the diagnostic shards were recovered. But in any case, all the shards were recorded, photographed, and drawn, making a total of 245 shards, any of them presenting surface treatment. So, as this pottery had never been studied, I developed a typology attending to different categories such as rims, fastening elements, vases, decorations, and fabrics, and analyzed them according to several variables. Moreover, a visual examination of the fabric revealed a handmade manufacture of the pots, as well as a probable open firing of them. The result of this typology was the definition of a few basic forms: an open, naked closet, simple closet, and spherical light, distinguishing only 8 characteristical types for each basic form. Thus, for naked closet, one type with a thicker rim on the exterior, another with a flat lid. For simple closet, 2 shapes, globular and ovoid. For the spherical light, one type with flat lid, another one with a slightly inverted rim, and for open forms, 2 similar balls with inverted rims, but with different orientations. However, a high degree of variation was present in the sample in terms, for instance, of diameter or orientation, probably due to the handling nature of this local production. So anyway, we have to wonder if these forms are pointing to regular functions, or whether they were employed for different purposes. Another significant aspect of our results is the decoration, which appears mainly in simple closet and spherical light forms, and is clearly circumscribed to specific areas of the pots according to the vessel type. Thus, decoration appears on the rims in open forms, under the rims in simple closet forms, and both on and under the rims in spherical light forms. Moreover, there is a scarce repertoire of techniques employed, mainly in fission, as well as the decorative motifs are few and simple, mostly groups of short implicit lines. Nevertheless, there are practically no 2 pieces with the same decorative pattern, as well as happens with shapes. Once concluded this typology, the results were compared with those from the classification of the pottery from the sites recorded by the Spanish project in central Somalia. These are a compendium of sites, northern settlements, in which a bigger implication in Indian Ocean trade is detected. The aim was to know if this exclusive territory had the same ceramics. This comparison allows us to observe some essential features from the Somaliland-Ethiopian border pottery in the one from central Somaliland. But this last one presenting our tradition, such as the flat inverted rims, you can see there, a higher diversification of forms, and a much larger complexity in the decorative patterns. This observation allowed us to conclude that both areas were closely related, but each one having their own identity markers. So whether the pottery of both came from the same traditions but buried or converted from different traditions is something to be researched. Once the comparison of the border local pottery with the one from its nearest area, it was compared with those from more distant areas owned or influenced by the sultanates. However, an issue of this study is that only a handful of sites have the pottery published, concretely those signals in green on the map. But any case, the result was the determination of different traditions for each area of the sultanate or surroundings, but with some elemental features in common. This observation appears to confirm the depiction made by the medieval text, which points to a high degree of decentralization in Barsadin and maybe in the Sultanate of Ifat. Say this, the next step of my research will be the contrast of all those results with correspondence analysis, the research on non-ceramical wares by means of ethnography, the analysis of fabrics and food waste, that is, what and how food is consumed, and the inquiry over the duality on foreign and local pots and its possible relations with status. It is expected that this study will, that this research lead us to a more accurate view of the relations between my study area and the sultanates and of the very nature of the sultanates. So this was all. Balaban, thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Mario. This is quite insight into pottery from kind of exotic place,
Yeah.
at least from the European perspective. So we all aware that you are at the start of your research. So is there any questions or comments for Mario?
I'm astonished to thank you for this context because it's quite familiar for us,
Yeah.
the territory. But I was wondering the context of findings, settlement context or trade or something. I didn't understand how
Yeah.
to purchase these ceramics.
Yeah, well, in my study area, the border area, all pottery shells come from settlements. In a surface analysis, that's why I say that it's a valuable sample, and the comparison with Central Somaliland is tricky because I am englobing different kinds of sites. For example, there we have a settlement. We have also nomadic sanctuaries, and also coastal fairs. So I decided only to present this border pottery because it's the one with the closest context. But obviously it needed more research and see the net results of the excavation that we are doing now in Ethiopia.
But initial results are indicative indeed, as we see. So there is no messages in the chat. Thank you. Oh, beyond.
Just one, yeah, thank you very much. It's amazing. All the work in this territory. I don't know what your background is, but that's another story you can tell me afterwards. Before you started the development. I'm not sure if I heard well or if you mentioned. You said that the study of the pottery that you have identified, chronology rather, relies mostly on imported wares, right?
Yeah.
What kind of inputs do you get there?
Well,
From where?
the imports mainly come from the Yemeni producing areas, from China, first Celadon, and then blue and white porcelain. More tending to Central Somaliland, for example, Martaban wares from India. Some shirts also from Persia.
Wow. I'm speechless.
We are all speechless.
Thank you, Mario.
Thank you.
Let's move on. We are shifting again. to online presentation. Oh, Zrinka, greetings.
Hello.
Uh,
Yeah.
Hello. Are you ready to start?
Yes, I'm ready. I will just share my screen. Hello, everyone, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to be with you online. I will just go. I'm sorry. Do you you can see my presentation, of course.
I can see, but try to share the full screen, please. Yes.
Is it now in full screen?
Thank you. Everything's perfect.
Okay, so I will start now. I have chosen a topic of medieval imported pottery in monastic and urban contexts in the North Adriatic. But I had to shorten it, and I will explain later why. I'm Zrinka Milosnic. I'm coming from University of Primorska in Slovenia in the town of Koper. So first, the location. I will focus on the Slovenian part of the North Adriatic, and more precise on northwestern part of Istrian Peninsula and the town of Koper, which you can see up here, that once used to be an island. I will explain this choice later. So my question regarding this presentation and my aim was to research and explore the social and economical role of medieval imported pottery types in different contexts in this small part of Northern Adriatic. I focused mainly on identification of imported pottery, and I was looking into contexts. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I made a mistake. I will just correct it in the. I have lost my presentation. Just a second. I don't know how this happened, but it did. So
We understand.
yes, I clicked something and it was wrong. So I have my presentation back, and I just have to share it with you once again. So here we are. So again, let's jump here. Okay, so that was the main question and main idea of my research. So I will just share a bit of methodology I used, or what I was doing. Here you can see the small map of Koper showing different types of excavations done by 2008. And then the big map is showing the excavations since 2008 onwards, which are still some of them ongoing. So I adapted my way of work to the state of research and the extent of archaeological intervention in the space of the town. My primary focus was on identifying the earliest medieval imported pottery types, and I will later explain why, and their contexts, in order to be able to see in what context they were used, and can we make any conclusion based on this, considering town's social and economical dynamics. To do this, to see this, I have looked at some of the publications, which are rare, but I have also gone through approximately 300 excavation reports. which shows quite a large discrepancy in between excavation work and publication work. So just to explain why I have excluded other towns, which I mentioned in my summary, there are no significant publications and not many excavations outside Koper in other towns. So I'm showing here just two pieces of pottery, which can be identified as Byzantine pottery types. And I'm showing them because they're the only ones in these towns on Slovenian coast. They both come from Piran. The upper one comes from excavation at the church, and the lower one comes from the excavation, from the underwater excavation. So these are not to be found in Koper, and I'm showing them here as the earliest some kind of proof for import. But coming back to Koper, I'm starting from the fact that after the late antique period, which can be identified in the archaeological context by the remains of houses and also different kinds of pottery, we can see quite a long, some kind of hiatus in recognition and dating of material remains from the following centuries up to the 13th century. This means that based on the archaeological record, we have been able to recognize the proper late antique phase, then something in between, and later and post-medieval phases. So what happens is that in archaeological record, we see continuous development through the building phases, and we also see this through the written sources, but we don't see it in pottery. We cannot recognize the pottery. So in archaeology in Slovenia, this has become somehow a consensus. So it means that interpretation of materials and the general understanding of development of the urban space is usually interpreted late antique and then immediately 14th or 15th century. Also because our colleagues are not so familiar with the earlier ceramics. So the same, so although we can say that there is life in this medieval city, we can say it was humble, traditional, and relying on the local production. So reading from the historical sources, the town gained its municipal rights in the 11th century, I'm sorry, in the 12th century, but we cannot see any change in the everyday's material culture, and we cannot see the change in the pottery used in different contexts. So the change in urban space, which we see in this map from the 17th century, happens in the 13th century and develops onwards. So after coming under Venetian rule at the end of the 13th century, in the sources, even before, the town was described as very important commercial point for and initial point for the trade routes to the hinterlands. So this might be true for the salt and other products, but at this point it is not visible at the level of everyday life and the change in pottery on the larger scales. This is also a period of structural changes in the urban structure by the introduction of the monasteries which I hope you can see my cursor. I'm showing you here all these larger areas are monasteries in the frame of the city. So we have their introduction into the urban space from the 12th century onwards, and we had have 8 functioning male and female monasteries in the town. That the important thing, they were somehow they were introduced from the West. So the main question of my work here was, can we identify the difference of material culture in monasteries and in other contexts in the town? We are, of course, familiar with typical traits of material culture in the institution with the communal way of life. But unfortunately, in Koper, due to continuous building activities and the state of publications, as I have shown, we cannot follow these or search for these. So to move to a newer map where you can see in red again these areas where the monasteries were, I have been able to identify 3 larger areas excavated in the town that correspond to the somehow upper level of society, politically or socially. And these are Dominican monastery, the earliest one in the town, then the garden of the Capuchin, later Capuchin monastery, and again, very in the vicinity of the main political center, one of the palaces, noble palaces called Passeggio in one period. So there are also ongoing excavations in the area of Servite monasteries. There were some other excavations which are not even present in the form of reports yet. So what I'm going to show you now is just these 3 locations. So this is and you will see the typical materials that we can find, and then I will summarize. So the Capuchin Monastery Gardens, showing us the living quarters before the building of the monastery in the 17th century. Then the Museum Square with the earliest monastery in the town, and the Passeggio Palace here, living from the 14th century, existing from this 14th century onwards. So basically, early imported types of pottery that we can find in all these 3, let's say, exclusive locations are typical for the Western Venetian area, some kind of, such as, for example, Spirale Cerchio, then also San Bartolo, and especially a lot of Maiolica Archaica. So these phases, especially Maiolica Archaica, is the largest important group of pottery, but only in the form of closed jugs or boccali. So when I had to compare to the next century, which is 15th century, and we can see the great change. At this time, we see different types of pottery, such as graffita, Maiolica types in different variants. What is important at this point is that there is no more division between the social context of these findings. Different types of pottery can be found in monasteries, in households, in palaces. So there is also a written source mentioning a potter in the 15th century, and we have proof for this production existing, and it might be also preserved in the street name called Calle dei Forni, or Street of Furnaces. So, and we also see production of everything else, glass and things like that in 15th century. At this period, we also witnessed the presence of several other types, such as Spanish Maiolica, basically being the brought in the town by pilgrimage, not by the trade. So to summarize, based on this overview, we can state that the imports of pottery starts in Koper and coincides with its stronger connection with the West, mostly Venice, and its surroundings, as the town came under the Venetian rule. At that time, Venetian families built palaces, and monastic orders colonized, let's say, the town from the same direction. By the pottery exclusively linked to these contexts at the end of the 13th and 14th century, we might conclude that it presented the level of imports needed to satisfy just the needs of the few in the town. So we find also best analogies in the vicinity of the northern Adriatic towns with similar histories as Koper. We also witness the change in the 15th century. We witnessed the change in the dynamics in the pottery trade, with imports from different production centers in the Apennines. And these were present in all contexts and obviously popular enough to start a local production, which has not differed from the important products. Of course, this opens the question, who were the potters? So, although we might have limited information from all these excavations, it is, I believe, for this phase of research, it nicely depicts the social and economical development in Koper, which slightly differs from the story of written sources when we talk about everyday life, and especially when we try to work with pottery. So thank you very much. I hope I was right in time. So if there are any questions.
Thank you, Zrinka. You are about the time. So is there any questions for Zrinka? Yes, Athanasios Ionis.
So, hello, Zrinka.
Hello.
I have two questions. Very nice, very rich material. I was wondering if you could tell us more about, if you have reached this stage of your research, if you could tell us, give us an estimate of what is the percentage of your imported pottery in the, you know, in the overall context of against the local pottery. Is it like 3% or is it 20%?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to continue? Do you have another question?
Yeah, later. Yeah. Continue.
Okay. For now, these are it's depending on the context, but of course, I cannot give you the exact percentages, because I was working with excavation reports. So it means I was working with material, let's say, publications in which 10% of the material has to be chosen to describe the site. So I know also for example, the Capuchin monastery, that there were 2 publications of this site, but also these 2 publications covered just about 20% of all materials, and they focused on late antique and early medieval phases. So I don't have possibility at this point to give you an estimate of percentages. But I can say there are present, they're not just especially these 14th century, they're not just you know, like the case of with Byzantine pots, so which are really rare, only in one location into small fragments. Do you have any other question?
Excuse me.
The microphone was up, so I was wondering, the second question relates to the first one, so I was wondering, the imports, which if I understood well, you said that in the 13th, 14th century, the imports must have played a role in that in the 15th century, you have a production at the site, right? A place where production specialist graffito, is that what you said?
I'm sorry. No, I didn't hear you very well, but did you ask me that I have said that there is production on these sites in 13th and 14th century? Because it's
and that the imports must have promoted, must have given an impetus for the establishment of a local production center at the site. Is that what you said?
Well, okay, I will give just a short overview. The imports, the first imports, I think, show us the social change in the town. So these are, we see a shift, and probably, not probably, but we do see a shift and newcomers in the town, which bring and leave for us in archaeological context the imported pottery. I believe this is maybe also connected with trade, but very small scale trade with these groups. On the other hand, in 15th century, we can see imports present. So throughout the 15th century, pottery types coming to the town and being present in all different contexts all over the town, from different production centers in Italy, today's Italy. And then we notice the appearance of production in Koper. At this point, I think we can talk about the trade and let's say new fashion and its impact on local production. So I see two different situations in two different centuries, let's say. I don't hear you again.
Thank you, Cynthia. Is there any more questions or comments? No? No. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we are closing our session.